Hello, guys. So this is Sylvia again. Welcome to our webinar. This is another webinar from Mira. Today we're going to talk about getting pregnant after 35. So just want to say hello to everyone. Really welcome you guys. If you want to type in the chat to let us know where you come from, because today we have a very diverse group. Our two speakers are from the UK, and we know our audience, some from UK, some from the US. So, I think today going to be really nice discussion, very practical topic. I'm personally very interested in this. So maybe you guys heard about this, maybe not. I just had my first baby and I just passed the 35. So, very exciting topic. So great. So I want to introduce our two speakers today, and we have Adam and we have Grace, and they are Adam is a leading expert in reproductive medicine, and he also works in WHO. And Grace is the reproductive biologist and nutrition scientist. So maybe Adam and Grace, you guys can talk a little bit about your backgrounds and your passion. Why are you interested in fertility?
Adam, go ahead.
Well, good evening or good day, wherever you are. It's lovely to be here, and thank you very much for inviting us, Sylvia. It's a real pleasure for us to be here. So I've been working in the field of reproductive medicine for over 30 years now. I lead one of the largest IVF units in the UK, but my general interest in reproductive medicine really spans all causes of fertility problems. And for many years, I've had a big interest in polycystic ovary syndrome. So I have written international guidelines, and I've been involved in all of the big consensus groups on polycystic ovary syndrome. I was the chair of the British Fertility Society for a number of years. I sit on some international committees for the European Fertility Society, ESHRA, in the past. And currently I'm involved with the World Health Organization writing the global guidelines for the management of infertility. Grace and I work together in Leeds, and I'll pass you over to Grace to introduce herself.
Yeah, so I'm hello everybody. Really nice that so many people are joining. It's just our pleasure really to try and help. So I'm a reproductive biologist and nutrition scientist. My background is molecular biology and genetics. So I'm very interested in the sort of different factors that can impact fertility, sort of both genetics, but also diet and lifestyle, the sort of modifiable factors that can impact fertility, and that's particularly relevant for age in terms of trying to get the best quality eggs you can for your age. What can you actually do about that? What's within our control? So that's kind of my interest. In Leeds, we run a very integrated service where we have this sort of holistic dietary and lifestyle service.
Sorry, can I just...
Is something happening?
Well, something's saying that they can't hear us.
I think that's not to do with us. That's not to do with us.
Oh, okay.
I think it's okay. I think most of it's okay here. Sometimes there's a little bit technical issue with the software on the, maybe on the audience side. But we're helping them to troubleshoot.
Sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay.
We have a double act. We're always interrupting each other. Usually Grace is interrupting me, not the other way around. Yeah.
So, but we work together in Leeds, as you can see. And so it's very integrated with the dietary and lifestyle and the holistic and medical. And that's what we believe is where the most effective outcomes can be achieved. It's that integration. And of course, it's all evidence-based. And that's what we're also very keen on, because there's lots of information available online and what is reliable and credible and so on. So hopefully you'll be in a much better position to get a sense of some of these things by the end of the talk.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Sounds great. So thank you so much for your introduction. And we believe we'll learn from you guys a lot today. So I just want to do a little bit introduction about Mira in case we have a new audience here. So again, I'm the CEO and co-founder for Mira. So what is Mira? So Mira is the tracker, home tracker, house tracker that try to, track your hormones into a number. So this is the only device you can get on the market that can do home tracking, but give you the actual hormone number. So just like what you're doing, the blood drawing in the lab, and we test the multiple hormones. We test your LH, estrogen, and also progesterone. So 3 hormones are there. So those are the most important 3 hormones going through your cycle. So regardless, you're trying to conceive, you're trying to avoid pregnancy, maybe you have hormone hormone imbalances many of us do, like PCOS or whatsoever, our hormones are so important because they control your cycle. And they can also tell you if you have any pathological conditions. And that's where Mira come from. So it's very easy to use. You basically just sample your urine and then insert this test wand into the Mira analyzer, and it will read your hormone numbers. And this number will be synchronized automatically to this app. And this app will track you for long term, will give you the curve. That's so helpful because you can see the pattern. You can say you never need to rely on, one line versus two line because everyone's different. So now you can see your, true hormone surge versus your baseline. And also this app will tell you when you're fertile, when you're not fertile, and many other information. So you can see, basically you can see your unique hormone pattern. So we have been on the market for a while. I believe here there are many Mira users on this call. So thank you for your support. And if you're new to Mira, you may want to check out our website, which is miracare.com. And there's so much information about that over there. And we hope it will be a really helpful tool for you to get to know your cycle. And regardless you're trying to conceive or trying to avoid, what those the goals you have. So we have a little bit disclaimer here. So we are hosting all these webinars for free because we try to help you, going through the fertility journey, which can be tough for many people. But it is not intended to replace the medical advice. So if you have a condition, you're not sure about what to do, always consult with your doctor before taking any action. So before going into our very interesting conversation today, we'd like to know you more. So I'm gonna put 2 polls onto the screen right now. So I would appreciate if you can fill that. So basically the polls are trying to ask about, what's your fertility goal? How do you track your hormones? So we know better about what you're doing already and what you try to know during this talk, and we can tailor our talk towards that. And it can basically make it more helpful to you. So I'm gonna give about 10 seconds to finish this. Great, we're seeing a lot of people trying to conceive today. And we have a lot of Mira users as well. Okay, 5 more seconds. Great, a lot of new answers coming in. So we have about, 88% of audience today are trying to conceive. So great, that's exactly aligned with what we're talking about here. And we have about half percent, like 55% of people are using Mira and others are using different things. Great, thank you so much for that information. That's really helpful. Okay, so great. So with that, okay, so we're gonna get into our conversation. So today's conversation gonna be very casual. So we're just gonna have we're not gonna have slides here, but we're gonna talk about some of these mostly commonly asked question here. And if you have any question, if you want to address, and feel free to type that into the chat. And our moderator will help to pick the most frequently or most popular answers from this talk, questions from this talk, and we will leave time to address that at the end. Okay, great. So the first question is why does fertility decline as you get older? So maybe Grace and Adam, you guys can comment. I know this must be a very commonly asked question from our audience today.
Sure, and I think it's a really fundamental question, and it's probably the most important issue for people trying to conceive. With respect to the chance of getting pregnant, the age of the woman, but also the age of the man can be important, and we'll come on to that later. But essentially, girls, when they're born, are born with a fixed number of eggs. So you don't make new eggs over time. You have a fixed number of eggs in your ovaries. At birth, there are probably between 1 and 2 million eggs in total. And you lose eggs progressively throughout your life. So even during childhood, eggs start to die away. when you start ovulating, and most adolescent girls start ovulating at around the age of 13 or so, if you have regular cycles and a regular ovulation from the age of 13 to maybe the age of 50 or 51, which is the average age of the menopause, that's approximately 450 ovulations. So in reality, you only need 450 eggs, but the ovaries are active the whole time, and a large number of eggs develop every month in the tiny little structures that we call follicles. Only one or sometimes two will be ovulated naturally, but whether you are just having a natural menstrual cycle, whether you're taking hormonal contraception, whether you're pregnant or breastfeeding, those eggs are continuing to be lost, even if you're not ovulating. So there is a decline in the number of eggs, and that decline is gradual, and then it starts to speed up a bit once you get into your mid to late 30s, which is why the age of 35 is being used today. But in reality, it's a continuous process. It's not like switching off a switch when you're 35, and the rate of change occurs at a different rate for different people. And it's very difficult to control or to have any influence over that. But as the number of eggs in your ovaries decline, so does their fertility potential. And that's because the egg is the largest cell in your body, and the egg contains all of the machinery that helps after fertilization for the embryo to develop and the cells to divide. And if you think about it, those eggs have been sitting there all your life, and so that machinery works less efficiently as you get older. And that's why, unfortunately, the chance of eggs fertilizing goes down as you get older, and the chance of irregular division of the genetic material within those eggs as the embryo forms is more likely to occur. In other words, you're more likely to get genetic imbalances, which results in embryos that may just not develop and implant into the womb, or pregnancies that are more likely to miscarry or be associated with certain genetic imbalances that can lead to conditions such as Down syndrome, for example, is the best known condition, which increases as you get older. So there are many, many factors, but essentially the egg is at the heart of fertility and is really significantly affected by a woman's age.
And of course, during that aging process, so all cells are subject to sort of cellular aging, and environmental factors can impact how quickly that takes place. So you will have a genetic predisposition to how quickly your fertility will decline with age, and that will depend on you as an individual. A really good rule of thumb is the age at which your mother reached their menopause. That's a good indicator of your genetic predisposition. It's not a fail-safe method, because sometimes you may have sort of gene variants that will make things different for you, but it is a very good rule of thumb. So knowing when your mother reached the menopause is helpful. And then beyond that, you have this sort of fixed sort of genetic predisposition, but then the environment in which those eggs age over time also impacts the egg quality, and that's where you have some room possibly to exert an influence. So when you're born with a fixed number of eggs and they're all suspended in a dormant state from birth, and then each month some are selected to start this development pipeline, and that development pipeline takes about 9 months. And the last 3 months is particularly important when those eggs mature. So that during that period in particular, that's when you have potential to impact egg quality, which we'll talk about as we go through.
Yeah. And many people don't realize what Grace has just said about the number of months that the egg is getting ready. So those of you who are, and I can see the audience is very in tune with your menstrual cycle, and you're using the Mira device, which enables you to have your own personal sort of handle on your menstrual cycle, measuring hormones. but those hormones only come into play in the last 2 weeks or so. So what we're talking about is the build-up before the hormones start to stimulate the follicle to actually grow and ovulate. So whilst your menstrual cycle takes approximately 4 weeks, and it's the first 2 weeks in which the follicle is growing and the egg is getting ready to be released, it's many months before that that the egg is being prepared. So that's potentially when you may have some influence on the quality or the health of that egg for the time of ovulation. It's, those last 2 weeks, it's kind of too late, isn't it?
Yeah, to have your impact. It's good to know, obviously, and helpful, and that's the other side of it. But when you put these two things together, I think that's when you start to really have the capacity to make a difference.
And we should just sort of, I know that this is about ovulation, but we should just bring men in here, because for those of you who are trying to get pregnant, the sperm are being made every day, and they're stored in the testes, and it takes about 3 months from the time that sperm are made for them to get ready for ejaculation. So when we're talking about lifestyle changes, and we'll come on to that more, again, it takes several months for men as well. So it's a joint thing. When we talk about lifestyle, it's a joint thing for you as a couple, and it can take many months to actually achieve those beneficial effects.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of interesting. So it's very much the age of a couple. So obviously we're focusing really on female age today. But younger eggs have the capacity to correct defects in older sperm during early embryonic development. So it's the age of the couple, not just the woman, has an impact. So as Adam mentioned, the egg has all the cellular machinery needed for early embryonic development, and the sperm effectively provides a bit of DNA to help with fertilization. And so it's the egg really that has that potential to correct those defects. So it's so the age of the couple is significant, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so
actually. Oh, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
No, please. I mean, I was just seeing you've changed the slide to bring in men.
Yeah. So I think that's a very good segue to the next question, which is that the same for women and men? So we always mention about put a lot of focus on the women saying, okay, 35 years old and above, and there's a decreased chance for fertility. But does men have an age cutoff as well? They're not affected that much?
There isn't, so obviously with men there isn't a definite end to fertility. So women obviously experience menopause when the menstrual cycle stops and all the eggs are effectively gone, and there isn't that definite end for men. So there is a difference, but male fertility does decline with age. So as Adam mentioned, the testes are constantly producing sperm. So those sperm are only ever about three months old, because once they've been produced, they will then start to die off after they've been produced. And that's also why regular ejaculation is helpful, because when they die off, they produce toxic compounds that can affect the health of the new sperm. But basically, during that sperm production pipeline, the processes that underlie sperm production start to work less effectively as men age. So you start to get things like more DNA damage in sperm and so on, and the quality of sperm generally will decline. And there are some studies that show older sperm with more DNA damage is associated with increased chance of miscarriage in the woman. So it's very much the fertility of the couple, as Adam mentioned, and it's really important to always consider, even if you find an issue or you think there's an issue with just one of you, always look at the fertility of a couple, because that's where you will achieve the best outcomes. And sperm health also impacts, obstetrics, so pregnancy outcomes, but also child health as well. So having a very good period of preconception care is really important for both parties.
And the other thing about male aging is that whilst, as Grace said, sperm are being continually produced, there's also an increased risk of some genetic problems, rare problems for older fathers. But that tends to kick in more once you get into your late 40s, 50s, or even 60s. And we're talking about, increased risk for problems such as autism and certain very rare genetic problems, which I'm not going to go into. But it's just, important to just be conscious of that.
But sperm is very responsive to diet because it's this constant production line. It's very responsive to diet and lifestyle. So you should always make sure that you have the appropriate medical investigations. And actually, this is all covered, by the way, in our book. And I don't know if we've mentioned, so we've written the fertility book.
Show us
a little bit more. I think there's a link on the thing.
Yeah.
So all the things that we're describing are explained in detail in the book, including ensuring that you have the right medical investigations, because it's very easy to think, I'm going to track my hormones, or I'm going to look after my diet and lifestyle or whatever, and then neglect all the sort of the appropriate medical investigations. So always, speak to your doctor, make sure that you're getting the appropriate tests, because it's very easy if you're focusing just on one thing to miss something that's really important for you, and particularly as age starts to kick in, don't delay in getting the appropriate medical help and investigations.
That's right, and I appreciate this is an international audience, and rules or guidelines may differ around the world, but essentially in the United Kingdom, where we are, the usual guideline is couples are not investigated until they've been trying to conceive for at least a year. But what we would like to sort of stress is that if you think you have a problem, so for example, if you're having irregular periods, or if there's something in your past history that you're worried about that you think might affect your fertility, or if you're that bit older and you're in your late 30s, please go and get checked out and don't delay, because if you do need help, if you need just general guidance about lifestyle and diet, or if you need medical help with medical treatments or even IVF treatment, those treatments work less well as you get older. So there's more of an imperative to try and get checked out and get into some sort of targeted program for yourselves as an individual. So it's individualized to you to give you the very best chance, not only of getting pregnant, but the main sort of thrust and message in our book, and we're saying the whole time, it's about having a healthy pregnancy and obviously a healthy baby, which is what we're all striving for.
Thank you for that introduction to the book. So at this point, actually, I want to, address some questions here, because I saw a very common question, many people are asking, which is about the age, right? So we're talking about, fertility of getting older. So many people are wondering, what is a cutoff? Like, for example, Sarah is asking, is it possible to conceive naturally at age 41? And then she had 2 failed IVF cycles due to poor responding to the meds. And I saw some other girls are asking the similar question, like, if I'm 38 and I have some, AMH is low, should I still considering trying to conceive naturally, or I should go to IVF immediately?
Okay, I mean, really important questions, and obviously always a bit difficult to answer specifics for specific individuals. Yeah. But as you can conceive naturally in your late 30s and early 40s if your AMH is low. So AMH is anti-Müllerian hormone, which is a reflection of the number of the little follicles which contain eggs in your ovaries. So it's a test of ovarian reserve. So if you have a low ovarian reserve, the fertility potential of your eggs will be reduced as well. But age has an additional impact. So if you have a low ovarian reserve at the age of 30, it's not as critical as having a low ovarian reserve at the age of 40, because your 30-year-old eggs will still be a bit more fertile. But yes, if you have an AMH test and it's low, you should seek treatment. But it doesn't mean to say that you cannot conceive using your own eggs. And similarly, the lady at the age of 41, and I'm so very sorry to hear, because I appreciate how heartbreaking it is to go through 2 cycles of IVF without success. This is when you need to sit down with your specialist and say, well, what were my eggs like? What were my embryos like? Is it worth trying again? Or should I be thinking about using donor eggs, which may or may not be something you want to consider? Obviously, success rates, people like to ask about percentages. And, in the best IVF clinics, your chance of getting pregnant and having a baby with IVF at peak fertility, so in your 20s or early 30s, maybe 50 to 60% at the very best. Some people have genetic testing of embryos, which we might come on to. That might increase the chances a bit. Once you get to the age of 40, at best your chance of having a baby with one cycle of IVF is maybe 15 to 20%. And once you get to the age of 45, the chances are really very low indeed. And our clinic, for example, doesn't really treat women using their own eggs once they've got past the age of 45.
But it is important also to remember that there is individual variation in this. So what may be true for one woman may not be true for everybody. So I think be very wary about thinking, I'm 41, therefore it's too late. And it very much depends on you as an individual. And that's why I was saying about the age at which your mother reached the menopause. And it's also looking back at factors that may have affected that decline in fertility. So smoking, for instance, makes you lose your eggs more quickly. And impact egg quality. So there's a sort of complex interaction of different factors that will impact your own individual fertility and whether or not you have the best eggs that you're capable of having for your age. And I know we'll come on to that in a little.
That's very good. Thank you so much. So we already got a lot of questions about this topic, which I'm showing on the screen. So that's great. So people are asking about what can we do to enhance their fertility if they're getting older? So some people are asking about supplements here, and there's another. Olivia is asking about lifestyle or best practice, to enhance fertility. So maybe you guys can comment a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so it's a huge topic, and we've got a few minutes. But there is lots of things that you can do within your control that will impact the aging process, and obviously the longer time you allow, the more impact you will have. And there's a lot of different factors that can impact on your reproductive pathways. So diet, lifestyle, everything, exercise, sleep, all these factors are important and will have an impact to sort of varying degrees. So what we always say is that you have the potential to sort of accrue marginal gains by looking at lots of different aspects of your diet and lifestyle. There isn't a sort of silver bullet that's going to solve all of the complex problems of reproductive aging. But there are lots of little things that you can do that over time have an impact. And we cover this in our books and our courses, and there's links again to these at the end in much more detail. But just to give you one example of a couple that saw us together recently, the man had poor sperm quality and needed ICSI for a round of IVF before they started seeing me, and she was 41 with very low AMH, poor egg quality. They worked with me for a short time, had a repeat cycle of IVF and had significant improvements, so they didn't need to use ICSI. And the egg quality, and they got more eggs collected, and the egg quality looked better, but it still didn't work. And this couple was given a 2% chance of conceiving with their own eggs, and they'd selected an egg donor. And we're getting ready to, and this was at the start of the pandemic, getting ready to line up treatments with egg donation, and then conceive naturally. And I've had a healthy baby girl. So I'm not saying that's possible for everybody, but there certainly is that potential. And this is where looking at the fertility of the couple and diet and lifestyle for both is really important. So yes, things like gut health, somebody mentioned that. So the gut microbiome impacts things like your nutrient levels, your inflammation status, your immune function, and all of these things have the potential to impact your reproductive pathways. But what is really important is understanding your own health and your own body, because all of this is very individual. So your nutrient levels are very important for the maturation of eggs during that 9-month period, and particularly in the final sort of 3 months. So having individualized nutrient testing can be helpful for you to understand what is happening in your own body.
Yes, and I think that's really important. So there are lots of supplements out there, and I think Grace is going to come on to talking about that in a minute. But we're great believers in, getting some tests done so that you know what your baseline is, and so you know what level of supplements to take. If I check somebody's blood pressure, I'll give them a certain blood pressure medication, then I'll recheck it again, and I may have to adjust it. I won't just sort of say, well, here's a bucket, take some blood pressure tablets. But unfortunately, that's often what we see with people who recommend just sort of multivitamins that they may help to a degree, but it's having a more structured approach and understanding what you might need depending upon your lifestyle, where you live, how much sunshine you're exposed to, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, so things like having good vitamin D levels are important.
So where do we get vitamin D from?
Sunshine. So vitamin D is produced through exposure of the skin to sunlight, and that's how it's produced naturally. And to produce good amounts of vitamin D, you need good magnesium levels. There is this complex interplay between different nutrients, and things like zinc are important for egg development and so on. And so antioxidants, so coenzyme Q10 can be beneficial for reproductive aging, but you just need to be careful about what you take. Doses of up to 600 milligrams daily of coenzyme Q10 may be helpful for women over 35, but the evidence for antioxidants generally doesn't really stack up. And I know there are books out there that recommend these sort of off the shelf, this is what you should take and so on. And it may work for some people, but it's really by chance, because it depends on what your baseline is in terms of what levels of oxidative stress are in your body. Oxidative stress is produced in your body as part of normal metabolism. It's increased during exercise, it's increased through aging. So the level of antioxidants you need to counter the oxidative stress in your body to optimize egg quality is personal to you. So it's really hard to offer standardized, take this level of supplements. So in terms of this webinar, at least take a good prenatal multivitamin supplement. That's helpful. Make sure your vitamin D levels are good, and try to get some individualized nutrient testing, and that will be helpful. And then making sure if you have any digestive symptoms, they're investigated. So somebody mentioned about tests for miscarriage before, and I noticed celiac disease wasn't on there. So those tests, it was beyond the scope of today to go through in all those miscarriage investigations, but they will tell you various things about potential different causes of miscarriage. But make sure you have celiac disease. So any digestive symptoms should be investigated, because celiac disease can affect absorption of nutrients, it can cause inflammation, and it can increase chances of infertility and increase the chance of miscarriage.
Should we say, I imagine most people have heard of celiac disease. Do you want to say a little bit more? Because there's this big thing about gluten and people who exclude gluten from their diet, whereas celiac disease is an actual condition in which the lining of your gut essentially gets so thin that it can't absorb nutrients properly, and so it's it's a real medical condition.
So the evidence for gluten overall for fertility is not strong. Some people feel the benefit from excluding gluten, and it's really important to pay attention to your body. And if you feel the benefit, and if you reintroduce gluten after cutting it out and you notice you're getting worse, then that's helpful. But don't allow these things to prevent you getting the appropriate testing. So if you've been struggling to conceive for some time, it's worth getting a simple blood test to rule out celiac disease, because then the gluten avoidance that's needed is of a whole different order, and it's avoiding cross-contamination and so on. So making sure you get the appropriate advice and getting the appropriate investigations is really important. And all of these things will interact and impact your egg quality. So we've seen, for instance, somebody who's had undiagnosed celiac disease, where there's all this damage happening in their body, actually the ovarian reserve improved after their celiac was managed with a gluten-free lifestyle. And that's not because more eggs are produced, but the tests for ovarian reserve are actually looking at the eggs that are in the development pipeline. And so what we believe is happening is that your ovarian function is improving when you're managing these kind of conditions and improving the underlying sort of biological environment, if you like. So the ovarian function is improving, so you're getting more eggs in that development pipeline that are succeeding through and ready for ovulation. So it's very complex, but pay attention to symptoms, optimize all these different sleep, exercise, get digestive symptoms investigated, have a good prenatal, good vitamin D levels, and so on. So these are all important aspects. In terms of ubiquinol, that's coenzyme Q10, yes, dosages of up to 600 milligrams daily, likely to be beneficial for women over 35, but just be careful about what other antioxidants you're taking. Some people just take everything, and that's where you can tip the balance to actually potentially cause harm.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we see lots of questions coming up, and we'd love to be able to answer them
everyone.
all. But I think as you get older, certain other conditions may become more common. For example, your thyroid, which is a gland in the neck, so it's important to get your thyroid checked. Somebody's just asked the question about endometriosis, which causes inflammation and may cause fertility problems in the pelvis. And that may be, well, that is more common as you get older. So it's very important because endometriosis, particularly if it's affecting your ovaries, can actually have an additional effect on your fertility, egg quality, your potential response to treatment if you need IVF. I mean, I've been operating today, and I operated on a number of women with endometriosis. So it's a common condition that can have a big impact. And what about diet in endometriosis?
It does, yes.
Because, you know, all these things are direct.
Yeah. So somebody's asking about, so endometriosis and PCOS can both impact egg quality because they're both inflammatory linked conditions, and they also cause oxidative stress in the body. So that's, if you have these conditions, that's where you may benefit from having more antioxidants, but you need to really seek personalized advice with this. So, but in terms of diet, so having an anti-inflammatory diet, so a Mediterranean style diet, so that's oily fish, whole grains, lots of vegetables, cooked tomatoes, and beans, pulses, and nuts is a good sort of anti-inflammatory style diet to tackle the likes of endometriosis and PCOS. Endometriosis also has an immune function component, so anything that you do, so things like vitamin D status, is important. So there's lots of different factors. It's beyond the scope of what we're able to cover today to go into this in detail, but lots of these factors will impact all of these reproductive pathways and the underlying environment, if you like, of conditions like PCOS and endometriosis. And there will be specifics to each. Again, it's sort of fairly complex, but hopefully it gives you some idea on how to start to pay attention to what is going on for you rather than just following generic advice that you may read for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Grace and Adam, for that answer. So we have a few more topics. We want to make sure we cover that for the limited time. So next, the question is what are some benefits for freeze my eggs? I think many people are considering about that. So how's the process going to look like? And is there age cutoff? What are your guys' suggestions?
It's a big topic. There are a lot of women who are looking to freeze their eggs as a sort of if you like, as a sort of a insurance for the future. If you're not yet ready to start a family, should I freeze my eggs now so that I can use them later? Because obviously eggs that are taken out of your ovaries when you're younger are going to be more fertile. Now, the technology has improved significantly in the last few years, so egg freezing is very successful from the point of view of the survival of the eggs, but it's kind of the same as IVF. It doesn't work for everybody, and if you freeze your eggs, essentially you need to go through a cycle of IVF with your ovaries being stimulated, a small operative procedure to take the eggs out of your ovaries. They're then frozen. An average cycle of IVF gets maybe 10 to 15 eggs, which will give you a reasonable chance in the future, because when those eggs are thawed, at least 80% should fertilize and develop into embryos. They can actually incidentally be refrozen once they're embryos. So it will give you a reasonable chance of having a baby, maybe a 50 to 60% chance, but then it depends how old you are when you have your eggs frozen. And in the UK, we tend to suggest that there's reducing benefit in having your eggs frozen once you get past the age of 37. And again, it will vary from person to person. The other thing you need to be aware, certainly in the UK, but I think we're the only country in which this applies. There's a 10-year legal limit for the freezing of eggs if you freeze them for social reasons. There's a move to change that, but it basically means that you can only keep those eggs frozen for 10 years. They don't go off. There's no evidence that they go off in the freezer, and they can actually be kept for probably 60 or 70 or even more years without any problems. But currently, social egg freezing is only allowed for a 10-year time limit in the UK at the moment. So is there any benefit? Well, it gives you some reassurance. It doesn't give you a guarantee. But I appreciate there are so many pressures on young women these days to develop your careers, develop relationships, find somewhere to live. There are huge pressures. Sadly, in many countries, and in the UK, this is a big thing. There's a big gender pay gap between men and women are really disadvantaged if they try to have a family at a young age. And Grace and I have been campaigning. This is another topic. But we've been campaigning to try and improve things in the UK and improving the education to young people in schools so that they understand about their fertility. My passion is to try and do myself out of a job, to enable people to conceive naturally, so they don't need to come to my IVF clinic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really about understanding also. So even if you freeze your eggs, what you have under your individual control and all the things that we've already talked about in terms of all those dietary and lifestyle factors, don't lose sight of those even if you do freeze eggs, because it's one part of a potential solution and it's not a guarantee. So always take care of yourself, and any eggs that you have left, and you may end up still being able to conceive naturally even if you do freeze eggs. So just learning to really understand your body, symptoms, looking at your history in terms of diet, lifestyle, medical stuff, putting it all together to try and really figure out things and tailor it to you is the really best approach.
And a couple of quick questions about embryos. I mean, eggs freeze as well as embryos. It didn't used to be the case. So I think it depends on your individual circumstances, whether you're on your own or if you've got a partner. But not all embryos or eggs survive. And I was very sorry to see the comment from somebody who some embryos didn't survive the freezing and the thawing. And it depends on individual circumstances as well, and your embryo quality. So there are so many factors, as we're trying to say.
Very good. And I think the next two questions can be combined. So what treatments are available to me to enhance my fertility? And also, is there age cutoff for doing these treatments? And if that's in UK, is there funding available?
So funding will vary from country to country. In the United Kingdom, we have a National Health Service that limits funding, and there are eligibility criteria. And usually you can only get funding until the age of 42. Some parts of the UK it stops at 40. And that's because of the declining chance of success. But in reality, if you want to access treatment, as I was saying earlier, there isn't really an age cutoff. The chance of conceiving with your own eggs reduces when you get into your 40s, and it's unlikely to occur over the age of 45. If you use donated eggs, then obviously you can go older. So that's the key thing. What about treatments? Well, Grace has said a lot about supplements and ways to try and naturally enhance your fertility. IVF treatment is essentially what we use these days to try and boost fertility. So many people have IVF who could still conceive naturally, but IVF is always going to be a significant boost over nature, because IVF involves taking eggs out of the ovaries, fertilizing them, and then selecting the best quality embryos. So you're overcoming a number of the hurdles that exist in the natural reproductive process, because unfortunately human beings are relatively inefficient when it comes to reproduction. So IVF enhances every stage of that process. And there are certain protocols that may be more suited to older women, so certain hormone protocols when we're doing IVF that may be more suited, but again, that should be individualized.
But even
yes.
So even if you're having IVF, all of the things that we've talked about, sort of diet and lifestyle, in fact, that we see people who have, as I described earlier, who have repeat cycles of IVF, who sort of make these changes and see improvements when they make the sort of dietary and lifestyle changes, making sure your nutrient levels are good. Yes, probably some coenzyme Q10 and so on. And so those are things that can support your medical treatment. And this is what we mentioned earlier, that is the integration of the sort of dietary lifestyle holistic with your medical treatment. That's going to give you your best outcome. So if you get to the point of needing IVF, don't lose sight of all of those things. And I know there's a question on sort of caffeine and alcohol. So yes, sort of association with better outcomes if you don't overconsume caffeine and alcohol. So really, for a woman, there's some people suggest cutting it out completely, but certainly no more than 1 cup a day. Alcohol best excluded altogether for women, or at least kept to a minimum, and for men under 5 units per week. Without going into all the detail, just a quick summary.
And you brought in men again, and it's important. It's a couples thing. You should be trying this together.
Yeah.
A very important question came up about the COVID vaccine. I know it's so topical at the moment, and our advice is please get vaccinated. In the UK at the moment, we're seeing some very sick pregnant women with COVID, people who may not have had the vaccine because they're concerned that it might affect fertility. There is no evidence that the COVID vaccine affects fertility. There is a bit of evidence that you might have a slight change in your menstrual regularity, maybe for a month or two. This is still evolving information. But so many things may affect the regularity of your menstrual cycle. And the COVID vaccine sometimes causes a little bit of a fever. So anything can just upset your natural rhythm, but it will not have any long-term effect on your fertility. But getting COVID in pregnancy is really, really dangerous.
Women are dying, and preterm birth of babies and so on. It's really, really tragic for the one to be protecting yourself. So if you're trying to conceive, it's best to get vaccinated before, and then you don't have to sort of worry about vaccination during pregnancy. But even if you do find yourselves in those circumstances, it's really been difficult for hospitals to witness so many pregnant women getting so sick and often dying, sadly.
Yeah, so we're talking about COVID and talking about the risk. So what are some risks when we're getting older but we're pregnant?
So certain things increase as you get older. So the risk of blood pressure problems go up. The risk of conditions such as diabetes in pregnancy go up, particularly if you may be a bit overweight. So those sorts of things go up. And then, of course, all the things that we were talking about that may have an impact on the risk of miscarriage. So those are the key things. But in reality, these days, with modern antenatal care and good monitoring, I think if you're older, you will require more monitoring during your pregnancy, just to ensure that you're checked out for things like blood pressure problems. But overall, the risks are not huge; they're increased, but it's not dangerous to get pregnant in your, even in your early 40s. But if you have any predisposing medical conditions, in addition to getting a fertility checkup, I ensure that the people who come to see me are also assessed for their potential health risks in pregnancy as well, and sometimes I'll ask specific advice of other specialists just to ensure that we've got a good plan in place for a future pregnancy.
Just touching on exercise, actually, so the question on exercise. So your general health, also as well as your age, impacts your sort of pregnancy risk. So yeah, and it's other lifestyle factors. So sleep, exercise, being a healthy weight helps, and so on. And in terms of exercise, light to moderate exercise on balance is best for female fertility, and it's best to start a program of exercise when you're trying to conceive that you can continue through pregnancy. People tend to sort of overestimate what they can do for fertility and underestimate what you can do during pregnancy. Exercise is very healthy for your cardiovascular fitness, which can impact your risk in many different respects. And it's also individual to you, is the other thing. So some athletes continue to exercise much more intensely and still conceive and have a pregnancy. So it's looking at what the population level data tells us, which is light to moderate. But if you are very fit and active, you can probably do a little bit more, and a good indicator is whether you're having a healthy regular menstrual cycle or not, as to whether exercise. If everything else is looking good and you're exercising a lot, you can always try to bring that down and see if that makes a difference. But that's the principle. And the only caveat to that, if you've had treatment for an abnormal smear in the past that may introduce weakness to your cervix, always get advice about exercise during pregnancy.
That's a very good answer. So a related question to that. So I saw someone's asking about fertility treatment and the risk. Is there any correlation, like IVF baby has higher risk for certain other conditions, or no?
So basically, it's again down to your eggs, and the chance of having problems after an IVF pregnancy are very similar to the chance of having problems after natural conception. Many women who need IVF also have other conditions that may slightly increase the risk, the sort of things that we've been talking about. But IVF, essentially, once you get pregnant, your IVF pregnancy needs to be carefully monitored. So we always consider that IVF pregnancies should be carefully monitored. The other issue with IVF is the risk of multiple pregnancy. Certainly in my clinic, we, for virtually everybody these days, just put one embryo back into the womb. So our multiple pregnancy rate is only 3%. But I know in some parts of the world, the multiple pregnancy rate after IVF is as high as 30 or 40%. I think there's a very important question. I mean, I know they're flipping up very quickly about the COVID vaccine and how long should you wait to get pregnant. Well, in reality, you don't have to wait. But if you are worried, some people are worried. If you're worried, we would suggest get the vaccine during your menstrual bleed.
Or the very early start.
Or the very early part of your cycle. And then by the time you ovulate, sort of 10, 14 days later, there'll be no concern. Because the only slight concern is if you get a fever as a result of the vaccine. But actually the evidence that we're seeing is that it's very, very safe, and we're not seeing any increased risk of miscarriage or other problems.
People are coming through the IVF unit all the time, aren't they, and going through treatment who've been vaccinated, and it's not impacting outcomes. And so, be reassured about that.
There's a question about, sorry, I shouldn't be asked.
I don't know how we're doing for time. What do you think, Sylvia? I don't know what it's.
Yeah, so I think we're doing good, and maybe we can continue with the agenda, and we can come back if we have time for a few more questions.
Okay, great.
So I want to take a couple minutes to talk about Mira. I know many of you guys are already Mira user. So how can Mira help you to get pregnant? So as we talked before, so Mira tests multiple hormones like LH, estrogen, progesterone. I saw some questions about Mira in the chat as well. Like people are asking what they should be looking for. So if you're ovulating regularly and when you're about to ovulate, your LH will go up. So when your LH goes up, that's the time you're like within 24 to 36 hours, you're about to ovulate. So that's your best chance to get conceived during a cycle. And also you have few days of fertile window before ovulation happens. And that luckily overlaps with your estrogen surge. So if you say your estrogen is going up already, so that's already the time you're fertile. And then progesterone will go up after ovulation happens. So if you have PCOS, you're not sure if ovulation has already happened, and you can test your progesterone after ovulation. And if your progesterone goes up and down, and that usually confirms the ovulation has happened. So as we mentioned before, Mira is the FDA and CE marked device, and it has lab grade accuracy. We have done tons of clinical trial. We have many partners in the doctor's world to collaborate with us. And you can identify up to 6 days of fertile window, which should be your entire fertile window. And also it works for irregular cycle and the PCOS freely. So here's something I just discussed about, if your ovulation happens here, the luteinizing hormone LH will go up, which is the blue line, and that's a good indicator of your ovulation. And your estrogen, which is the blue dotted line, and that go up few days before that, but overlaps with your fertile window. So those two hormones can help you to identify your fertile window. And also MiraWorks helps actually a lot of our users are above 30 or even above 35. There is something called unexplained infertility, and many of our users have that. So usually that doctor can't really tell what's wrong with you, but they say, oh, you're just unlucky. But we don't really trust, what is unlucky. There should be something, either you have a problem or it's just difficult to find the time. So we have worked with many users, they're 40, they're over 35. They were thinking about go to IVF, but even before that, they tried Mira and the pinpoint ovulation, and the pregnancy happened. So we hope those stories happen to you guys as well, or at least some of you guys. So that's that's how we work to help people. And also we know the hormone imbalances and the irregular cycle are usually pretty difficult to manage, especially you're trying to conceive, you don't know when the ovulation happens, and that's also where Mira come into play as well. So Mira can identify every ovulation attempt, like if your body trying to ovulate, and it can't identify that activity beforehand, and then you could try to conceive and capture every opportunity, and also can confirm ovulation when your progesterone rises, right? So you know which one is actually true, and that's very commonly happen, like multiple attempts, and then only one, or sometimes even there's no actual ovulation happen during cycle. So that's very common during people among people who are having hormone imbalances or irregular cycle. And we already have more than 20,000 customers who got pregnant, and we have many stories, success stories you can find on our website. And also we have a fertility club on Facebook. There's more than 6,000 people on there already, and the people talk about their fertility journey. You don't have to talk about Mira only over there, but many people share the story about Mira, share how their how their hormone curve looking like, or so on. So you're more than welcome to join that. Okay, so at this point, we will have 3 minutes left because we are already taking some questions during the talk. And I want to just take maybe a couple questions from the chat about Mira. So I saw a question earlier asking about if you're going through the IVF process, can you still use Mira? The answer is yes. So we you during your IVF process, you will have stimulated hormones, so you will have higher hormones, LH and estrogen, to release multiple eggs, and the doctor will test exactly the same hormone Mira is testing to understand when your ovulation is about to happen. And yes, you can test it with Mira, and we actually work with some doctors on that as well. They use Mira to understand when ovulation will happen during the IVF cycle. And another question is about progesterone. Say, is the progesterone 1 still available? When can I test? Yes, the progesterone 1s are already available. It was launched about a month ago, so it's fairly new, and you can get it from our website. And there's a testing protocol on the Mira app. You can follow that, but usually we recommend you to start testing about 5 to 6 days after your period finished, and then just then follow with the testing schedule marked on the Mira app. It's dynamic, so it will tailor towards your needs. And then lastly, for everyone who stayed up to this point, there's a gift for you. So you can get 10% off on the Mira Fertility Plus kit and any Mira Fertility ones for the code, which is webinar TTC 10. Okay, so Mira Fertility Plus kit is the LH plus estrogen tested ones. So both hormones are tested on the same one, and you can also order the progesterone test one separately with this code. So it works for everything. Basically, everything you need, you can get 10% off. Okay, great. And also, I want to mention the book. The great book written by Adam and Grace. You can find on Amazon, or moderator Valerie already put the link into the chat. I saw that. And you can find this on Amazon, and you can check out this book. It's available in the US and also in the UK. And maybe Adam and Grace, I saw many audience here, and they're trying to looking for you if they have follow-up questions for you, or they want to consult with you for more services or guides. Where can they find you?
So if you look on our website, it's balancefertility.co.uk. So there's a course that's 8 modules that covers. So it's over, each one is more than an hour. So it covers each one of these topics we've sort of touched on briefly in a lot of detail, and helps you understand how to personalize everything. And you can also then see how to book appointments and so on through that website. So we'll be circulating a discount code for that course. Actually, we'll be working with Mira after this to sign up to the course. And obviously the book you can order from Amazon, and it should get shipped anywhere actually in the world, hopefully. But through the website you can find us. We've got a Twitter account which is BalanceFert, and our Instagram is launching soon as well. But you can just through the website.
Thank you, Grace, for that answer. And I know there's some questions we didn't have time to answer. We're running out of time today. If the question is about Mira, and feel free to email our support, which is support@miracare.com. And you can email them about any question with a product, or how to test, or even how to understand your cycle. They will analyze your cycle for free. It's not medical advice for you, but it should help you to get to know more about how your cycle works and what can you do. So before we finish, I like to share a couple last poll, and I would appreciate if you can help to fill that. And those are the evaluation for us. We try to understand if the webinar is helpful for you, and you like to see more, you like any recommendation to your friends, or what else you want to see in the future. So I'd like to give this the 30 seconds. And meanwhile, I really appreciate everyone for being here. I know it's 2 different time zones, but we have so many audience today, and you guys are super engaged. Love you guys all, and really wish Mira and Grace and Adam's help and great support can be helpful to your journey. And also, I really appreciate Grace and Adam for your time. This is great and very practical, very informative. I personally learned a lot from you guys today, so really appreciate that as well.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us and for all the wonderful questions. And I think we'd both like to wish everybody all the very best in their fertility journeys. We know it can be difficult, but also at the same time, having the support of Mira and the device is really beneficial. And any knowledge about your own cycle and your own fertility can only improve things for your future. So we'd like to wish you all the very best.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, guys. So have a great day, have a great night, and I wish to see you guys somewhere soon again. And good luck with your fertility journey.
Thanks now. Bye.
Bye.